The salt-laced wind carried whispers of fortunes won and lost. It whipped through Serenity Cove. Marco, a fisherman with eyes as deep and blue as the sea itself, felt the familiar tug of ambition. It lived alongside the worn ropes of his weathered boat. Each day he cast his nets, hauling in enough to sustain his family. But the siren song of true wealth echoed in his heart. It was the kind whispered about in hushed tones at the harbor tavern. Captain Ben, a man who wore the sea's dangers like a badge of honor, fed those dreams. He spoke of uncharted waters teeming with riches beyond imagining. He promised Marco a place on his crew, a chance to secure his family's future with a single daring voyage. That night, the sky bled into shades of fiery orange and bruised purple. Marco returned home, his mind a tempestuous sea of its own. The laughter of his children, the sight of his wife, Elena, mending nets by the warm glow of a lantern, anchored him to the present. The life they'd built might be humble, but it was theirs. It was held together by love and the steady rhythm of the tides. Torn between the comfort of the familiar and the allure of the unknown, Marco sought out Old Sal. Old Sal was a retired fisherman whose wisdom was as vast as the ocean he'd sailed for a lifetime. They sat on the weathered docks. The mournful cry of gulls was a stark counterpoint to the rhythmic crash of waves. Sal, his gaze fixed on the distant beam of the lighthouse cutting through the encroaching darkness, spoke. "The sea," he said, "she's a fickle mistress. She can grant you riches beyond measure, but she can also swallow you whole. The true measure of a man isn't the size of his catch, but the strength of his harbor." Marco's brow furrowed. The old man's words were like a riddle washing over him. Sal continued, his voice roughened by time and tide. "The lighthouse, it doesn't chase after storms or chase fleeting treasures. It stands firm, a beacon in the night, guiding lost souls home." The metaphor struck Marco like a bolt of lightning illuminating a storm-tossed sea. He realized that chasing fleeting opportunities, no matter how enticing, left one vulnerable to the whims of fate. True security lay in building a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. That night, a new resolve took root in Marco's heart. He began to see his familiar fishing grounds not as a limitation, but as a wellspring of consistent opportunity. He poured his energy into repairing his nets. He was mending not just the frayed threads, but also the holes in his financial planning. He shared his newfound wisdom with Elena. Together, they crafted a plan. They saved a portion of each catch. They invested in sturdier nets and a small boat for Elena to sell their surplus at the market. Their children, inspired by their parents' quiet determination, learned to mend nets alongside them. The rhythmic weaving of threads became a tangible lesson in patience and planning. The storm arrived with the fury of a mythical beast unleashed. It lashed the coast, swallowing ships whole with its monstrous waves. Marco, watching from the safety of the harbor, his family huddled close, felt a pang of sympathy. It was for those who'd ventured too far, lured by the promise of easy riches. Captain Ben's ship, once a symbol of audacious ambition, was now just another piece of driftwood. It was tossed upon the raging sea. The storm subsided. It left behind a trail of destruction and a stark reminder of the sea's unforgiving nature. While others mourned lost ships and shattered dreams, Marco and his fellow fishermen, who had stayed close to shore, persevered. Guided by the steadfast light of the lighthouse, they had weathered the tempest. Years passed. Serenity Cove rebuilt, stronger than before. Marco's small fishing operation, built on the foundation of consistent effort and wise planning, flourished. Their home, once a humble cottage, grew into a testament to their hard-won prosperity. One breezy afternoon, a young fisherman approached him. His eyes were filled with the same restless ambition that had once burned within Marco. "Mr. Marco," he began, his voice laced with awe, "they say you're the wealthiest man in Serenity Cove. What's your secret? Where did you find your fortune?" Marco smiled, his weathered face a roadmap of lessons learned. He gestured toward the lighthouse, its beam a comforting presence against the azure sky. "My fortune wasn't found on a distant shore, lad. It was built here, day by day, choice by choice. I learned that true wealth lies not in chasing storms, but in becoming the lighthouse." The young fisherman looked from Marco to the steadfast beacon. A thoughtful expression dawned on his face. In the silence that followed, the wind seemed to whisper. It carried with it the timeless wisdom of the sea, a legacy passed down from one generation to the next.